Hello, you're listening to episode 3 of 8-Minute Movies, Knives 8, a podcast talking about the 2019 movie Knives Out in 8-minute chunks, presented by me, Kieran, and him, Peter. This is a sequential podcast that contains spoilers for Knives Out, so you should go and watch it first before listening, and start the podcast with episode 1. How are you doing, Peter?
I am doing okay. I am excited. I tell you, I'm excited.
All right. What brings you such excitement?
Well, I'm excited because something's been announced, something that I'm very happy about. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Is it Easter?
No, Easter has been apparent for a long time and no longer excites me.
Okay. Wow, that's harsh. Can't even get any eggs.
Look, I had my egg weeks ago. It's fine.
Oh, how can you confess to that on a recording that you got your egg and you ate it months before Easter?
Not months, like a couple of weeks ago. There's no law.
Oh, well, maybe there's not, but there should be.
Anyway, I am excited about Monkey Island. That's what I'm excited about. And the reason I'm excited about it is because it was, we've talked about formative experiences on this podcast.
Yeah,
it's
in the past. Usually mine, because you emerged fully formed from the natal sac at the age of 27. But yeah, if you've got something,
Well, in your case, your formative experiences are things that no child should witness.
Bad movies and knives.
Right, yeah. In my case, probably maybe the most formative thing for me as a little child of the age of about 10 was The Secret of Monkey Island, which I played on my little Amiga computer when I was growing up. I had my parents were teachers, and one of the other teachers at the school my mum taught at, her husband wrote hints for an Amiga game magazine that I read called Amiga Action.
Wow.
Under the pseudonym The Boggett, he wrote grumpy little hints.
That's cool. I like that.
I thought it was a very cool job at the time. And so just once or twice I went round there and he'd show me a game or two. And he showed me the beginnings of Monkey Island 1 and 2 when I was around there. And it was unlike anything that I'd seen in a game before, because at the time, mainly what I played was like platform games and little action games, and nothing that had like people talking in it and making jokes and things like that. At most, you'd maybe get a few kind of screens of story at the beginning, and that would be it. And so it was really fascinating to me that there was these characters that moved around and talked and seemed to be involved in some sort of story, because I'd never seen anything like that before. And I immediately begged my dad to go out and buy Monkey Island 2, actually, because in my head, you'd had to get the latest one with the biggest number, because that's how games worked. You want the newest and best one.
That's weird, but I can see your logic. Yeah,
right. Like I had when I had my Nintendo, I had Mega Man 2. I never bothered with Mega Man 1, and I never felt the need to.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. And I don't know whether he sensed that I would probably get more out of playing the first game first, or whether he just realized that the first game would probably be cheaper, because it had been out for a while at that point. But he persuaded me to instead get the first game, and so so I got The Secret of Monkey Island, and I have loved that series ever since. And it really got me into adventure games, and also it it got me into the idea of making music as well, because they got really good soundtracks, and I would say they contributed in a huge way, along with the other adventure games by LucasArts, in making me want to write music.
Which of the games is the one that has the adaptive soundtrack stuff?
So yeah, that's the second game. So it has this really clever system called iMuse, and the way it works is that, so it's just MIDI. The soundtrack is just MIDI, and within a MIDI file you can leave these little things called system exclusive messages, and they just talk to particular, usually bits of hardware, saying this hardware needs to know this thing to do a certain special effect that hardware is capable of, or whatever. But they used it to help control the music in their game engine by saying, okay, so this let's say you wanted to end a piece of music seamlessly, no matter how long the character had been moving around in the scene. Well, what it would do is, when the scene ends, it goes, okay, we need to end the music now, so wait for the next system exclusive message that's hidden in the MIDI file, and then that will tell you which ending it will be appropriate to go to from that point. So they did cunning things like that. They did things where one piece of music would transition really seamlessly into another piece of music as you were walking around an environment. It was really clever stuff, really advanced for the time. And even now, you don't really get soundtracks that do a lot with that. And they used iMuse in other things as well, in more limited ways. You get the same sort of effects in stuff like X-Wing and TIE Fighter that lots of people played. But this was probably the most kind of, Monkey Island 2 was probably the most thorough implementation of iMuse.
Yeah, I was going to say that sort of adaptive soundtrack stuff hasn't really been used except fairly recently in like, sort of open world or sort of stealthy first person games where like when the fighting starts, the soundtrack will kick in with all these beats and then fade out as you kill the last dude, and seems a lot clumsier in some ways than the Monkey Island soundtrack.
I would say yes and no at this point, but because one thing that I've noticed recently is a lot more attention is being paid to the kind of production values of adaptive soundtracks, and you're starting to get and just with the available space that you have in a game. Games have got a lot bigger. You've got a lot space to play with, and computers have a lot more processing power to handle complicated music stuff going on in the background, and overlapping tracks and things like that you'd need to set up a good adaptive soundtrack. So you're seeing a lot more of it now, and also a lot of times in smaller indie games, they're designed with kind of adaptive sound in mind, that's used in various ways. So you do see it nowadays, but for a long time, I think it was genuinely the most advanced kind of soundtrack that existed in video games. I think just way past the 90s and into the 2000s, I'd just never heard anything else like it. It's just so impressive the way that it's done. So and just the music on its own as well is really well done. It's three composers called Michael Land, Peter McConnell, and Clint Bajakian. I don't know how you say that surname, but it's very influential on me in a lot of different ways. And a sequel has been announced.
Yeah, that's the excitement that we were getting to
several weeks
14
ago.
minutes ago.
Yeah.
And this is going to be Monkey Island. It's not, is it? There already is a Monkey Island 4.
There are 5 Monkey Island games in existence, in fact.
But am I getting this right? That the 5th one is like one of those I'm going to say compartmentalized games because I can't remember the right word. Episodic games.
Yes, that's right. They
Fully compartmentalized, if you know what I mean.
It's one of those severed games. Foreshadowing.
We have to. No, it's not foreshadowing. It's weight bait.
Oh yes.
I can't remember whether we looked that up and it turned out to be something terrible or not.
No, it's fine.
Okay, good.
Yes, so that was an episodic Telltale game. I thought it was pretty good, that one. The fourth game was the first 3D one, which I do not like so much. I just don't think the humor holds up, really. I don't think the plot holds up. And I think, this is true of the episodic one as well. I think the 3D has become extremely dated at this point, so it doesn't look as nice as the other ones either. The key bit of information here is that the first two games were led by the series creator Ron Gilbert. And after he made those two games, he left LucasArts and went off to form his own company and do his own things. And they, after that, made some more Monkey Island games. The first one was Curse of Monkey Island, which was generally well received. Not everyone loves it, but I think it's a pretty solid game in the series. I do have a few quibbles about how they use certain of the characters, and it's maybe got a weaker ending compared with some of the other games in the series, but it's a good game, and I think it holds up pretty well nowadays, and it introduces as well some of the characters in the series that are rather well liked. But this new game that's been announced, called Return to Monkey Island, which amuses me because that's always been the rumored title of whenever there's a rumor about a new Monkey Island game, people assume it's going to be called Return to Monkey Island.
Didn't they also announce it on April Fool's Day?
Yes. So it's being led by Ron Gilbert again, and it was announced on April Fool's Day on his blog, which is what he said he was going to do something like 8 years ago. He said something like, if I ever make a new Monkey Island game, I'm going to announce it on April Fool's Day. And then he did that, and it went largely ignored for the few days after that, until he put out a trailer as well for it and made it official.
That's that. I take my fucking hat off to you for trolling your audience so aggressively.
Yeah, I mean, I might have thought that it was real actually when if I'd have known about that post, but it kind of went silently by. Nobody paid any attention to it because it was April the 1st.
Amazing.
And also, the other reason that it kind of passed by is because nobody seriously thought that he would do it. And the reason for that is the way that he's talked about doing sequels in the past. That he would only do it if he had the rights to Monkey Island, which just seemed vanishingly unlikely to happen because well, first of all, he never owned the rights. He did it when he was an employee of LucasArts, so it was they were never his rights to own, even if he was the creator. So there's no kind of path to getting them back. He never had them, you know. And secondly, you know, Disney acquired Lucasfilm and all of its companies, and Disney do not, well, for a start, Lucasfilm do not give up rights, and Disney double don't. So it was just never going to happen. So, but he'd occasionally talk about how he might do a Monkey Island sequel if he was able to do it, and it was always a bit of a disheartening conversation because, you know, I always felt like, but you've made it so impossible for yourself to make this sequel that you just kind of toying with people by talking about it. And also the way that he talked about it in the past as well, he kind of wanted to carry on from Monkey Island 2 and ignore the things
Disregard the other games.
And I kind of get that impulse, but it always felt a bit to me a little bit disrespectful of the work that other people had done on the series, and I don't think it was intended to be that way, but it rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. And the other thing is that it was all about what he would do, and he very rarely talked about who he would bring in. And I think the really important thing about Monkey Island is that there are so many very talented people who were involved in those first few games and the subsequent ones as well, that I wanted a bit more acknowledgement that if he was going to make another Monkey Island game, he would need some help from these people to actually make it a Monkey Island game. He is not the whole of what Monkey Island is. And so when I first saw this, I was immediately kind of interested, but also just a little bit wary, because I was like, okay, what is this actually going to be? So to keep this short, too late. The noises that I'm hearing at the moment are really encouraging. So he's brought on board Dave Grossman, who is another person who is one of the original programmers and writers on the early Monkey Island games. There's no mention of Tim Schafer, who is also one of the main three.
I was going to ask, because he's like fully owned in perpetuity by Microsoft now, isn't he?
Right, and maybe there's some complicated stuff with doing it because of that, or maybe he's got his own project at the moment and he just is not interested in revisiting this at the time. Who knows? I think his voice in all of this will probably be missed. I think it's quite a major part of Monkey Island, but having 2 out of 3,
it's not bad.
It's not bad, as I believe someone once said. And also they have brought back all of the original musicians, the 3 I mentioned earlier, which is really impressive. Even so, Tales of Monkey Island, which is the episodic one, only brought back
compartmentalized, I believe.
Yes, severed. They only brought back Michael Land, and Michael Land's really great, and all of the 3 composers are really great, but I think it's going to be a much better soundtrack with the 3 of them together, in the way that it hasn't really been since Monkey Island 2. I think the 3 of them actually worked a little bit on Escape from Monkey Island, the 4th one, the 3D one, and that did have a really good soundtrack, actually. So I think they did all contribute to that one, but this feels like it's a bit more of a kind of overall collaboration between the 3 in the style that it was in Monkey Island 2, and that to me is really exciting.
See, that sort of pops an interesting question into my head. I mean, like, you are a composer, famously,
yes.
A game music composer. How does it work when more than one composer works with another composer? I mean, is it just you divide the labor of all of the songs across the 3 of them, or is it like they'll go back and forth with each other trying different things? I don't know.
I'd say it's a bit of both. There are they're all sort of performers as well, and they come from a kind of performance tradition. So part of what they do is they'll like jam together and stuff in like a little band, and they did a bit of that actually in the Psychonauts 2 soundtrack. They worked together on one of the pieces of music.
Fantastic.
So Peter McConnell is the main person for the soundtrack on that, but he brought in them as kind of musicians to work on music for one of the levels. So they kind of did a bit of collaboration on that already. So it might just be that they're kind of riffing on each other's ideas, but the main way that they worked on Monkey Island 2, as I understand it, is they each had, like, they were each assigned an island. So for the bulk of the game, there are 3 islands that you're exploring, and I believe it was Michael Land did Scab Island. Peter McConnell largely did Booty Island, and
Booty.
Clint Bajakian did most of Fat Island.
Ask me about Loom. Sorry. I never really played these games as a youngling. I somehow missed. I think the first one I played was 3. Is the start of 3 where you're on a boat shooting a cannon at pirates, like skeleton pirates in little boats?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so 3 is the first one I played, and I was like, it wasn't the first point and click adventure I'd played at that point, but I was wowed by how it was basically like playing a cartoon.
Yeah,
it's so well drawn and so fluid and alive. And yeah, the soundtrack is really like. Annoyingly, since the moment he said Monkey Island on this, I've had the Monkey Island theme looping in my brain, and I haven't played those games that much. So oh god, let's do the order. So I played 3 at a friend's house on their computer that was slightly better than my 386 or whatever the fuck it was. Oh, it was Pentium 1, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played 4, which run like an absolute dog on my computer. Like Guybrush, you pressed forward, and like 6 to 8 working days later, Guybrush would move. So I don't have very good memories of that game, but I think a lot of it might just be down to the fact that it was like playing the game if the computer was on a lunar lander or something. I would send my signals and hope that they would be received.
Yeah, but it also wasn't the best.
I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt here, man. The computer I was running it on, I think had like a 100 megahertz processor. It was below the minimum standard for whatever it was. And then I didn't really play 1 and 2 until they remastered them. Like, I was going to say fairly recently, but that's just a straight up bald-faced lie, isn't it? It was like a decade ago now.
Yeah, I suppose it's going back a few years now, but it's not that long ago. Yeah, that they remastered
You keep
them.
telling yourself that, man.
I think the remaster of the second game in particular is very well done. The first one a bit more hit and miss what they did, but they're worth playing. I
really enjoyed playing them. I'm not great at point and click adventure games or puzzles in general, so so usually I would end up cheating to some degree. But well, I say cheating, I mean like going, I have no idea what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing here, and then looking up like a solution. Which in those days involved contacting the boggart.
Or phoning a hint line is the other thing that I do remember doing as a child.
Yeah, a £9 a minute helpline.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to do it very often, but I did do it a couple of times to get help with games. But I remember for the first game, Secret of Monkey Island, I had a book that was just a walkthrough of the game. I don't even remember where I got it from.
They still steadfastly publish those, even though the internet exists now.
Yeah. Now, Monkey Island 2 had difficulty modes, so you could play with fewer puzzles in one mode.
Yeah, there's another Ron Gilbert game that he released like a long time after Monkey Island's Thimbleweed Park.
Right.
And I played through that, and I put it on easy at the start, and I didn't realize that would just literally cut out whole sections of puzzles. Like, it just simplifies like everything. But weirdly, it leaves the stuff for the other bits of the puzzles in your inventory. So it's like easier in some ways, but just more baffling. like you'll have a spoon or something. Like I reached the end of the game with like 20 or 30 things in my inventory. I'm like, what are these for? Because I didn't know that it had cut out sections of the puzzles. And a year later, I happened to watch someone playing it on a stream or something. I was like, Well, the fuck me? That's what you're supposed to do with the fork or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't actually play Thimbleweed Parker, mainly because it's evoking that kind of Maniac Mansion era
Yeah.
of graphics that I'm just not that nostalgic for. I kind of came in a little bit after that,
Yeah,
and
it
so
looks dated, but
yeah,
on purpose.
and I just wasn't. It didn't hit the right nostalgia buttons for me, I guess. But I'm kind of interested in playing it at some point. But anyway, yeah, Monkey Island. I'm excited about it, and the right noises are being made. It feels like this is more collaborative, more acknowledging of the subsequent games as well, because the trailer has Murray in it, which is a character that was introduced in the third game, and he said that the way that they've built it, they don't want to actually take like they don't want to undo the work of the subsequent games. I don't know exactly what that means, because apparently this is going to pick up from where Monkey Island 2 left off. So that's very confusing to me. But I guess we'll find out what that means soon, because it's coming out this year.
Oh, that's exciting! I think we should live stream you playing it for the first time.
Maybe, but
let's figure out how to do that.
I just want to be left alone and play my game.
I know that's why I'm opening you up to public scrutiny.
Like many a Monkey Island game before it, it is being it's got a brand new style, a brand new art style that's by Rex Crowell, who was responsible for a game recently called Knights and Bikes, which was a very fun little game.
Yeah.
A little co-op game. We should play that at some point as well. It's good. Knights and Bikes.
I keep meaning to play it. It's on my Steam wish list, and I keep not buying it. Let's cut this out.
So the new game has what looks like, we haven't seen very much, but looks like this kind of fairly striking storybook style, which is quite a departure from the previous game, and I suspect might end up being a little bit controversial, but I'm here for it. To me, new Monkey Island game, new visual style has been a thing since forever. Even the second game looked quite different to the first game. So I'm happy to see the new style. I know that Rex makes great stuff, so I'm really looking forward to how it all comes together. So yeah, Monkey Island.
Yeah, it's interesting that if you're of a certain age, you kind of have a formative point-and-click adventure, I think. And for you, it's the Monkey Island series. But for me, it's Full Throttle, which is also another LucasArts game. But it's a like a standalone one. It never got like a series or anything.
It nearly got a sequel.
Really? I didn't know that.
Okay, so it nearly got a sequel in 3D called Full Throttle Hell on Wheels, and you can find a trailer for this if you look on the internet if you want to see what the sequel is going to be like. But it was after Tim Schafer had left the company, so it had nothing to do with him, and people thought that it might be bad, and that seemed to be confirmed by at some point later they just kind of quietly cancelled it and said yeah, we just don't think this is up to the standard that it should be.
Oh well, they're probably good it didn't get a sequel then. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. You played this gruff motor bicyclist. I can never biker, I guess.
I think they're traditionally called bikers. Yeah.
Why do I default to being a Victorian gentleman about these things?
Yes, the motor bicycle.
You default to the velocipede rider, Benjamin. It's set in some sort of post-apocalypse thing, some sort of mild corporate post-apocalypse thing. Is it cyberpunk? It sort of is. And there are gangs of bikers, and you play Ben, who leads the polecats, and you are set up and implicated in a murder, like literally the first thing that happens in the game. And you have to solve the murder, clear your name, and get your bikers out of jail. And it was just an amazing game. I loved it.
Yeah, Full Throttle's great.
I was going to say, and Full Throttle is actually the subject of one of our other aborted podcast ideas.
Yes, overdrawn at the memory bank. I believe that one was called.
where we were. Oh, how did that work? It was like I play like 20 minutes of a point and click adventure game that I've played at some point in the distant past, and you laugh at me mercilessly for not being able to remember what to do with hoses and things.
No, the concept behind that podcast was that we both stumblingly try to remember everything that happened in the game
right
up to a certain point before we're allowed to actually play it and confirm how accurate our memories were.
Oh god, yeah. I remember we did 2 episodes, and then we forgot any more episodes.
Yeah, we were quite far through it.
Let's do it for the Patreon. We can bring that podcast back. Yeah, but I really enjoyed it, but and I think it was a tad easier than some of the others because I got a lot of the puzzles myself.
Yeah.
I can remember 3 puzzles that I needed help with in the game that I looked up the solutions to, which by my standards is basically not doing it at all. You know?
Well, at the time, also, it was considered very short for an adventure.
Yeah, it wasn't a long one. Yeah,
than the other LucasArts ones, but it doesn't really feel that short to me nowadays when I play it.
I think another thing that people weren't that keen on it was that it has combat sections, which are not usual in point and click adventures.
Yeah, they're combat sections, but there are also kind of puzzles around them as well.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it was a perfect storm of just confusing people on what they were supposed to do.
Again, I remember the combat sections because, like, it literally, it switched to a different exe, like to do the combat sections, and I remember them never playing that great on my terrible old computer. But like, obviously, they do now because
right,
computers got more good in the meantime.
Because those sections used the engine for a game called Rebel Assault, which was like a Star Wars
all this shit
FMV game.
This is the episode where I'm genuinely startled by you knowing a whole bunch of nerdy stuff that I don't.
In the 90s, like being a nerd around LucasArts games was basically my internet life.
I never played Rebel Assault because it probably wouldn't have worked on my computer.
I think I played the demo, but I was never that interested in playing the game.
Oh, I've got a Full Throttle fact for you that you already know, but the listeners might not know. Can I say it?
Go on then.
So, there was a section of the game that got cut where Ben, the biker that you play, eats peyote and goes on a trip in the desert. And that whole concept, which got removed from the game because it was too tonally out of place, I guess, is what gave Tim Schafer the idea to go on and make Psychonauts and Psychonauts 2.
No.
You knew that, right?
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah,
I was doing a Benoit Blanc there.
Yeah, that's my Full Throttle fact. Thank you for listening to the Full Throttle Fact podcast. 40 minutes in, we haven't mentioned the show yet.
Hey, I just did.
Yeah, nice. A mere 37 minutes of us general rambling before you. Do you remember that? Oh, in the mid-season break, you said that someone had sent you a tweet saying if I'm listening to a podcast about something and I have to wait more than half an hour for them to get to the point, and I'm going to stop listening. And I was like, well, if we feel particularly both called out and attacked by this.
Yeah, it was something like if you're still doing your hilarious intro banter by the time I finished walking my dog, I don't care how interesting your podcast is, I'm going to stop listening. Yeah, this podcast is probably not for that person, even if they have a good point.
Maybe I should add track markers to the exports so you can skip the intros. No, we shouldn't be catering to that sort of monster. The point of podcasts is to listen to untrained idiots gibber about nonsense for hours, and that's the hill I'm going to die on.
So, before we get back to Knives Out, do we want to go on a completely separate digression?
Do you know, I think we should maybe save the completely separate digression for the next episode.
Good idea. All right.
Yeah, okay. Because then all that stuff that we said at the end of the last episode will make even less sense than our usual rambling nonsense.
So we've been baiting this one for a while, but I suppose it's to gently encourage you to watch Severance so that when we finally get around to talking about Severance, you don't need to worry about being spoiled by anything we say.
It's a good show. You can get a free trial of Apple TV to watch it, or you could already be an Apple TV customer, I guess.
There are certainly methods to watch that program.
Those are the ways, I guess.
Yeah.
Podcast. What's the next bit? I mean, we haven't even got out of the introductory section of the podcast.
I think I'm supposed to ask you how you are at some point during this.
You get
grumpy if I don't do that.
Yeah, you haven't been doing that, and I just write it down in my little book of times that you have offended me.
Oh, your little book of grievances.
Yes. What's that a quote from?
Is it a quote from something?
It just reminded me of something. It might be a quote from you.
It is.
Yeah, this podcast is getting increasingly deranged. Come on, lads, get back on topic. So this podcast where we break a movie up into 8-minute chunks, watch it in 8-minute chunks. The movie we have selected this time is Knives Out. We're in the third chunk of Knives Out. We're trying to cut that little description down as quickly as possible. So there you go, little sentence. The more I talk about the fact that we're trying to cut it down to less time, just increases I have negated any benefit in in doing it shorter by over explaining it.
Yeah, it's very self-defeating, but on the other hand, it does contribute to our hostile listening environment.
Another thing is that we have these bells, and we may ring them at certain times.
That is true.
That's the best explanation of the bell game at this point.
All right. The words that we're listening for to ring the bell are knives. No.
It's not even knives. You don't even know what the words are. I'm not cutting that.
I was going to say knives and out, but that's not true. It is thing and out.
No, you can't just say it like that, because eventually by like season 5 we're going to have spelled out some sort of weird psyops code phrase.
All right, well,
thing, out, inside. With the thing out, then we got Back to the Future, so it'll be back.
Great. We're basically constructing, as I think I said last time, a system whereby it's going to become increasingly difficult to say anything in this podcast.
Just me and him sitting in silence, and every time someone takes a breath, a bell dings.
Terrified even to form a sentence.
Hang on a second. I need to look up a name. Like a fucking Ingmar Bergman movie. Let's do it. Let's not do a series about Ingmar Bergman movie. Okay. This section of the podcast, please. We're back on topic. You to take the dog around the block another time. He needs it. He's fat. Let's not talk about the thing. It's part of the podcast where I talk about something. Peter, what do you want to hear about? I don't know why I'm giving you choices now. You have no choice in the matter.
Rian Johnson?
Yeah, Rian Johnson, the writer and director. Ryan Craig Johnson, born December the 17th, 1973, is an American filmmaker. He made his directorial debut with the neo-noir mystery film Brick from 2005, which received positive reviews and grossed nearly $4 million on a $450,000 budget. Transitioning to higher budget films, Johnson achieved mainstream recognition for writing and directing the science fiction thriller film Looper from 2012 to critical and commercial success. Johnson landed his largest project when he wrote and directed the space opera Star Wars: The Last Jedi in 2017, which grossed over $1 billion.
Christ.
I think you're legally obliged to read that number in that fashion.
Mm.
He returned to the mystery genre with Knives Out in 2019, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay. Knives Out is the film we're talking about in this podcast.
That's true.
Johnson has said he was inspired to become a film director after seeing Woody Allen's 1977 film Annie Hall. It moved me in a way that few other films have moved me. That's something that I pray to God, if I am able to keep making movies, I can only hope 20 years down the line maybe I'll be able to approach. He also directed the somewhat controversial episode of Breaking Bad, Fly, followed by 51 and Ozymandias, which received high praise from critics.
I did not realize that he'd done that Fly episode. I remember that episode of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that is a weird episode of the show. Are we allowed to talk about Breaking Bad? It ended like a decade ago. We are. Yeah. Go watch it if you like. It's quite good. Best TV series of recent times, I guess. A lot of people said. Walt is in his lab. And he won't cook meth because there's a fly in there and he's worried about contamination. And he spends all of 45 minutes of the episode trying to kill the fly, increasingly not doing it and going slightly more mad.
Mm. I remember enjoying that episode. Go on.
I'm not sure if I did, but it's been a while since I watched it. I certainly remember it, and that's important, I guess.
The other thing that I will say, I'll put my cards on the table here and say that The Last Jedi is my second favorite Star Wars film.
Ooh, what's your first favorite?
It's possibly my equal favorite Star Wars film, actually. My first favorite is probably The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, nice, good choice. I liked it, but it is very different to the others. So if you kind of went into it expecting more of the same, doesn't justify any of the hate or abuse or anything it received, but I can sort of see why people were like, oh, this is different. But, sometimes things are different, and a movie that's like a sequel to one that's nearly 40 years old may not be for you anymore. It might be for your kids. Think about that.
Yeah, and hey, Empire was also a bit different at the time with its dark ending, and not everybody liked that. Not everybody appreciated Empire at the time.
But they didn't have the internet.
Exactly, but I feel like there are some parallels there. Maybe that's something to do with why I really like them both, because they were both in different ways, kind of surprising and interesting, and just tonally a surprise, and just did things that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
And I just really enjoyed both of them, and it really, the more time has passed, the more pissed off that I've become that the third film in that sequel series just basically rejects the whole thing and just kind of undoes all of the little kind of nice things that it set up for a sequel.
The third film is a bit of a train wreck.
Yeah.
The third film is them just going, oh no, don't go away, Star Wars fans. Look, we've taken away the bad things that you said. I mean, John Boyega was done dirty by the Star Wars people. I mean, fuck me.
Yeah.
And not to mention Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose, who has quite a big part in the second movie, and at the third, in the third one, she appears at the start and is like, I will not be appearing in this film, and walks off, and that's it. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, and just the whole premise of it pissed me off. Like, but Palpatine's back now, I guess. Shrug. It happened during a game of Fortnite.
It did.
it's just such nonsense. It feels like it's trying to be a course correction that I never asked for or
Yeah.
wanted.
Do you remember how we agreed to stop this digression, and now we're talking about how Star Wars is bad?
Yeah, well, look. Last week I said that I've got some Last Jedi
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
material to go through, and there it is. I think it's a great film. I don't think it's a perfect film, but I think it's a really, really good Star Wars, and one of the only recent ones that I would describe as really, really good. I kind of like. I thought Episode 7 was fine.
Maybe maybe next week we can talk about how I think Rogue One is great and you think Rogue One is bad.
I just don't think I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's bad.
Dear. Rogue One is the Halo Reach of Star Wars movies. You don't know who these people are, but you know how their stories are ending.
Yeah, I know that film works really well for some people, and I respect it, but it just didn't quite work as well for me.
The only thing that really pisses me off about Rogue One is that Lego didn't make the little cargo transporter thing as like a Lego set. I even tweeted them and said, "Make this, I'll give you money."
What? And they didn't immediately do what you said?
Yeah, no, they didn't then rush to production.
Yeah, weird.
Well, it just goes to show that, you're not always right on the internet. I don't know. I don't know what point I'm making here anymore. Let's move on.
Should we get back to the shit?
Yeah, you can't call it shit. You can't insult the listener's time like that. I think the fact that we're an hour into an hour-long podcast about a movie and we haven't said a fucking word about the movie proves that we are fairly indifferent to insulting the listener's time.
Look, if they're still listening, they've got no idea what's going on anyway. So
this is the Animal Crossing of podcasts. We've got a lot of shit we're going to say, and you can't skip any of it. But there's some fun at the end. Maybe there's a fishing mini game.
There isn't.
All right, so now I'm going to answer your questions from the previous episode, Peter. And the only question you had was, is it flan or flam? Which, mea culpa, it's flam with an M, flam.
Okay.
It's just that, it goes by quite quickly in the movie, and I'd written flan in my notes.
Okay, fair enough.
It's flam. It's a lifestyle brand that promotes self-sufficiency while emphasizing human need or whatever. That was from memory, right. So that
well, I feel vindicated.
Well, you fucking shouldn't. And now we're going to review your answers from the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, if you were watching this for the first time, who do you think the murderer is, and how did they done it? And you were still sticking with Linda and the Knife, which sounds like a prog rock album, because she seems uncomfortable with the whole interview process and wants it like wrapped up quite quickly. And we have what happens next. And you said Harlan is basically firing Walt to go off and do his own things because he says he's been too controlling of Walt's destiny. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be introduced to Marta.
Yeah, so I feel okay about these answers. The only thing is that the introduction to Marta comes quite late in these this next 8-minute chunk, and there's a few more motives that get established at this point, which I didn't quite remember the order of.
Yeah, and with that, it's time for us to watch minutes 16 to 24 of Knives Out.
All right.
Finishing his flashback conversation, Harlan tells Walt it was unfair to keep him tethered to his work so he couldn't make something of his own, and that he's not going to be running the publishing house anymore. This scene is hard to watch.
Yeah.
I can see why they say Walt looked like a kicked puppy for the rest of the night. Walt incredulously asks if his dad is firing him, and Harlan says they'll talk details tomorrow and calls him a good boy.
With a little kind of pat on the cheek.
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
So it's
thing.
a pat. It's a pat. Like, you know, he's supporting his son, but also his mind is made up.
Right, as he says. And Walt doesn't even really argue with it. You sort of get the sense that he understands that it's not going to
Yeah.
do any good to debate his father on this.
And back in the present, a clearly moved Walt says that they had a discussion about ebooks. Walt is not as good a liar as Richard is.
No. I think that's fair to say.
I have a note here that says, is this our first outright lie to the police? Or,
oh, is it?
Or as we junior detectives call it, a motive.
Yes, well, yeah, this is what's happening over these next several minutes, is that we're just getting a whole bunch of motives established in a row, I guess.
Yeah. It's like watching the start of 3 Columbo episodes all at once.
Yeah.
Or the rare Trilumbo. Walt says that Ransom had an argument with Harlan, and that Ransom is the black sheep of the family. That Harlan always supported him, but that they had a blowout argument that night. This, interestingly, is a visual effects shot, because they realize that they're sitting there talking about Ransom, and Ransom will not appear for some more time into the movie. So they edited a photo of the family, Richard and Linda, with Ransom standing behind them, and they comped it into the shot, so you'd know who Ransom was, even though he hasn't appeared yet.
Right, okay.
And I did not pick up on this when we saw it in the cinema. It just looks like an actual shot, rather than a green screen thing. In a flashback, we see the whole family interrupted by Ransom storming out of Harlan's office after arguing with him, although we can't hear the words.
Yeah, and this kind of deflection towards Ransom here, even though we haven't really met the character, it feels so overt that it automatically made me less suspicious of Ransom at this point, which is perhaps deliberate.
Yeah, that's also a thing in this genre of fuck you. That's also an instance in this. I don't remember now why I settled on instance to replace the forbidden word, but I guess I'm sticking with it. Yeah, that's also an example of something that's common in this genre of movie, where where there'll be one person who's highlit as the murderer throughout, who it turns out is just naturally very shifty.
Yeah.
The immediate example that pops into my mind, although they are deliberately overplaying it because it's a comedy, is Hot Fuzz, where you've got Timothy Dalton playing Mr. Skinner, the manager of the local supermarket, who the first thing he does when he meets the new town policeman is say to him, "You've got to stop me, I'm a slasher." And he's like, "What, of prices?" And who then subsequently turns up at every murder or accident scene in the movie immediately after it's happened, acting really shadily. My personal favorite is driving by the scene of a fire while listening to Fire. Yeah, there's often sort of deflection, as you say, to a character who may or may not actually have done it.
Right, yeah, and here it's just so overtly Walt just saying, "Hey, suspect this man," that my brain just said, "Well, it's not going to be that person then, probably."
We cut back to Richard, with Blanc saying that he knew he was there early to help the caterers, and asked if he spoke to Harlan in his study then. Richard lies and says that he didn't, but Blanc has spoken to the caterers and knows that he has, and that Harlan was heard using the phrase, "You tell her, or I will." In a flashback, we see Richard standing in Harlan's office. Harlan shows him photos of him kissing a woman who isn't his wife in a car. This location here, Peter, Harlan's little office thing, real location or set? First time we've seen this room.
Oh, yeah. As I recall, it's fairly small, but there is a window. I think there's a window to the outside in it, though. I feel like, so I'm going to say it's real.
You can make windows.
I know, but I feel like they would have framed it differently if there was going to be a prominent window.
This is a real location in the Ames mansion. This scene makes me personally very uncomfortable because Harlan's got a Windows XP laptop. The film's set in 2018 and XP was discontinued in 2014. Jesus, Harlan, up your OPSEC. Come on.
I don't think I noticed that.
Oh, God. Another thing interesting going on here, and we'll probably come back later, is Harlan's got a signed baseball that he basically uses like a fidget spinner. He keeps like flipping it over and over in his hand while he's talking, like agitatedly. And Harlan then explains he's written everything in a letter to his daughter, and he'll give it to her tomorrow, unless Richard tells her tonight. You tell her, or I will. Back in the present, Richard hastily prevaricates. Is that the right word? Yes.
Doesn't prevaricate mean to go back and forth on something?
Yeah. What's the word for you when you like dither, but then make up something quickly? I think this is the closest I've got. I'm just going to go with it.
Sure.
Back in the present, Richard hastily prevaricates that Harlan has decided to put his mother in a home, and that his wife didn't want that, hence the you tell her or I will. I've got a note here that says, I said prevaricates, but that's not the right word. What's a word for quickly making up a lie? Which is just a conversation we had, and I've edited out of the podcast.
Hold on. I'd have gone with invents.
The thing is, I know there's a P word. Like, listeners, if you know a word that starts with P that means to lie quickly about something, email us.
Yeah, tell us what word would have been better than prevaricate.
I can't believe I called myself out in my own notes.
Regardless, though, I think it's not a terrible excuse for one that's made up on the spot. He needed to think of something that would plausibly could have resulted in him shouting, you tell her or I will, but is not important enough that he might not have forgotten about it later, you know.
And not important enough to kill Harlan over either.
Exactly.
But it's a really good, like, off the cuff lie, but also we kind of glossed over it in the description, but he is not a good liar. There's a lot of like flickering around the face for like the first couple of seconds, and then he's like, oh yes. And he kind of like draws out the amount of time he needs to come up with the lie. I'd say he seems very shifty, so perhaps not that great a liar for someone who's actually cheating on his wife.
It's got a bit of the same energy of Blackadder trying to explain away great booze up.
Oh, that's a deep cut. Blackadder, can you explain yourself? Lengthy pause. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that is classic. I love that. The pause of like maybe 45 seconds where you see his face working and he's thinking about it. Oh, fuck. We cut to Joni, who was also at the house earlier, to see Harlan about a mix-up with Meg's tuition. In a flashback, we see Joni talking to Harlan, who explains his accountant has noticed that Meg is double dipping. The school is being paid tuition directly, and Joni is also taking a check for the same amount. $100,000 a year. Harlan says he's cutting her off. He'll pay the tuition this one time, but no more, and no more allowance for Joni.
Yeah, and he once again here says something like, my mind's made up and it's all for the best. Very similar to the way that he was talking to Walt earlier. And I think it's the first real hint that we get that these things aren't necessarily happening all around the same time by coincidence, but he's doing a bit of cleaning house at the moment.
Yeah. I would say personally, of all the things Harlan does here, I think cutting off Meg's tuition is probably the worst of the lot.
Yeah,
me.
because Meg doesn't even necessarily know about this.
Yeah, she's got no truck in this. So, I were I a reclusive millionaire who I would have let her finish the college degree and then said that's it. But
yeah,
I don't know, morals, I guess. What even are they?
yeah. I think she can probably afford the college tuition.
That's an interesting point. Joni doesn't get quite as much screen time for maybe she done it as the rest of the family. But she does in deleted scenes.
Right. Okay.
Which we will be talking about later, and we definitely have more to say on the matter of Flam.
Okay.
Yeah. Elliot says we should have a little break here, and I agree. And Joni leaves. She bumps into Linda, who's looking for Richard.
Yeah, it's fair enough that at this point,
22 minutes into the show.
Yeah, we've just established several motives in a row. Time for a break. This moment where she bumps into Linda as well, who and Linda is clearly only interested in speaking to Joni to the extent at which to which she can say where Richard is.
Yeah, it's like have you seen Richard? And she says no and starts talking, and Linda is walking away.
Yeah. Just a really nice character moment.
We cut to Richard hiding in Harlan's office. He pries open Harlan's desk using a letter opener and removes the letter to Linda. He opens it, and it's blank on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice anything about the letter as he turns it over?
Did I notice anything about the letter? There was like some sort of thing on the front of one of them in a circle. I didn't really pay attention to what it was, though.
Yeah, me neither. I don't remember what that is. I think it's just a seal of some kind.
Okay.
That's it. No, and there's nothing about that. No. As he turns it over, you can see a sort of faint reflection on the paper where the words are written.
Oh, okay. I did not notice that. No.
So, I mean, I didn't notice it in the cinema at the time, but like as I think we mentioned last time, that I'd sort of twigged already, like from what Linda said, that this was going to be an invisible ink thing.
Yeah, I think I'd kind of put that together as well the first time that I saw it. But it's interesting that he's also got no idea about this game between Linda and Harlan. This is just
I hadn't thought about
private thing between them.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but they don't share much as husband and wife, I guess.
Yeah.
Plus, also, I very pleased they went to the effort of making it an actual invisible ink letter. Like they could have just had it be a plain piece of paper, and no one would have been ever the wiser, would they?
Yeah, I suppose not.
Richard thinks that Harlan was calling his bluff. He picks up Harlan's baseball from his desk and somewhat churlishly throws it out of the window of his office. I wonder if that will come back to haunt him.
Almost immediately.
Outside, Wagner, Elliot, and Blanca leaving. Elliot is sad that the case doesn't seem that interesting. And he's like, what's the line? Something like, if I ever thought the great Benoit Blanc would be working with me on a case, it would be something more interesting than just a suicide.
Right, yeah, he's just skeptical of the whole need for this, I suppose.
Blank picks up the baseball. I think we're setting up the chain of comeuppances for Richard, right? Very early, as you said.
Yes.
The baseball toss was actually a fairly late addition to the script, as Rian Johnson had to figure out a way to get Linda to go back into the study.
All right.
And ultimately, she will be returning that baseball to the hand thing on Harlan's desk where it lives.
Yeah, I suppose I've seen this film a bunch of times, but I never really thought about the kind of trajectory of the baseball and and how that kind of neatly ties that little subplot up. I
Yeah.
never really thought about that.
Trajectories and arcs are an interesting metaphor for it, especially given what Blank will be frothing about later.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to know what's this is possibly my favorite fact about the movie? Is that the windows on that side of the house don't open, so there's a prop guy hidden away against the wall, flinging the baseball away from the house, trying to make it look like it's coming out through the window. Oh, the magic of cinema. I love it. I love it. I love it when it's something like, oh shit, just have Gary stand there and throw it. Come on, you do it.
Yeah, sometimes the solutions are incredibly elaborate and you have to set up special camera machinery or whatever to achieve the desired effect. Sometimes it's just a guy crouching down and flinging a ball.
Which of you can throw a baseball from the wrist straightest? Blanc asks if a slit throat is usual for a suicide, but Elliot says that Harlan was much more dramatic, that he practically lives in a clue board. Blanc is lighting a cigar here, and these cigars were custom made for the production because they're much longer than usual.
It's a pretty long cigar, actually.
They are, yeah. They never really go into why they wanted to give him long cigars, but I guess it's just another of his weird foibles.
Yeah, it gives the impression that these he's not just any cigars; he gets these from somewhere.
Yeah. These are Turkish cigars. I don't know where cigars come from. Inside, Marta waits nervously for her interview, staring at the picture of Harlan. It's the magic changing picture from earlier. She sneaks to the window to try and overhear the detectives, and Blanc is peering in at her, scaring her.
Yeah, and it's obviously suspicious that she's trying to overhear, but I also feel like the audience wants to be on her side already, and that's probably the point of that earlier scene with her at home. You don't really get that with any of the other characters, so you're seeing things a little bit from her perspective already. Right. And also, just in general, it feels like it doesn't quite fit the genre of mystery fiction that we're working with for the killer to be a nurse who is being casually disrespected by most of the family. It just doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I mean, the nurse being a killer in this sort of movie is like way up there, but Marta doesn't fit the profile.
Right, exactly.
Blanc calls her outside and explains she was hired by Harlan himself. There's something here which is something you wouldn't notice until like a later viewing of the movie, and even I didn't really notice it until they pointed it out in the commentary tracks. Is that we will find out later that Marta has a spot of blood on her shoe. Blanc, 2 seconds after seeing her, has a prolonged gaze at her shoes. He literally knew the entire time.
Yeah, that does come up later, actually, doesn't it? But I never really thought to clock that.
Yeah, he says hello to her, looks down at her shoes for longer than is necessary, then carries on talking to her. And I noticed it being weird, but like, he just seems like a weird guy.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, as we've said, this is a spoilery podcast. Obviously, we know that she is at least involved, and that's going to be established pretty soon.
I like how we said she was innocent a moment ago, and now we're like she's shoes soaked with blood.
Yes.
Dear. And that rounds out these 8 minutes. Again, awkwardly, kind of in the middle of a thing. Maybe that's just the pattern for this.
That's right. 2 dings.
Get out.
Perfect.
Get instance. Yeah, maybe that's just the pattern for the rest of this show. I don't know. So we we reach the traditional postprandial cigars and brandy section of the podcast. Have you ever smoked a cigar?
I have smoked a cigar on one occasion.
Yeah, same.
And it is associated with the worst hangover I have ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, you get a lot of nicotine if you do it wrong.
Yeah, so
Not for me.
It's not for me either. And I smoked a cigar on one New Year's Eve in the early 2000s. I remember I'd had quite a lot to drink, and someone just handing me a cigar to smoke for New Year, and I was not sure, even in my drunk state, I was not sure about doing this because I do not like the idea of smoking at all. It's just not for me. They said, oh, "Come on, look, it's just a prop. You just hold the thing, and it's just a bit of fun." And so I decided, okay, I will pretend to smoke this cigar for a little bit. And I did, and then in the morning, I had such a bad hangover. It was. I almost. I considered phoning an ambulance at some point. It was terrible, and it's one of the reasons actually why I very rarely do like a significant amount of drinking in an evening to this day, is that nothing is worth a hangover like that. And so I'm a pretty light drinker nowadays. And yeah, and I just remember having this hangover and just having the whole thing made worse as well by just having this horrible cigar taste in my mouth.
Oh, fantastic. Mine was in a very fancy hotel in Bavaria, and within a week I was hospitalized for, I assume, unrelated reasons.
Okay.
What a treat. Cigars, don't do them, kids. Although, to be fair, I think most kids are into vaping now. They're not like a huge branch of children moving into cigarillos.
Yeah.
Oh, God, Peter.
Yeah.
If you were seeing this for the first time, who do you think is the murderer and how done it?
Well, I think I'm going to stick with Linda because...
Really? You've had two fantastic motives lined up for you already. Three, possibly.
Yeah,
I think Joni's is still the weakest at this point.
I think it's just because those were set up so like they were so drawn attention to that, and Linda was still being cagey for reasons that aren't readily apparent. That I'm still thinking, okay, there's something going on with Linda that we don't quite yet understand. Is probably where my head is at, and I don't really suspect ransom because of what we talked about earlier. It just being too lampshaded, and I don't really suspect Marta because, as we talked about, it doesn't really fit the profile here. And just the other ones, it just seems like all the motives are just too bang on the nose. There's nothing mysterious enough about their behavior that's making me think, oh, they're hiding something that even we, the audience, don't know yet. It's too, everything feels too neat with the rest of the character, but I'm still in my head thinking, why is Linda so in a hurry to get this process over with? It could just be that she just doesn't want to think about the death of her father anymore. That's plausible, but is there something else going on there? That's, I think, why if I was watching for this for the first time, I'd still be thinking, okay, maybe there's something going on with Linda.
What happens next, Pete?
So what happens next is, well, we're going to find out that Marta throws up when she tells a lie. and Benoit Blanc is going to test this successfully. And so I think the way that he tests it is to see if she knew anything about the affair.
Yes.
And so she's going to throw up into like a bowl or something that's nearby. And then we're going to have her kind of more formal interview where she is going to try and explain what happened, and we are going to find out that there's a bit more to that story.
Oh, nice. That's that you did that in the style of a of one of those Google plot synopsis writers.
Yeah, I don't need to, because as we said, this is a spoiler podcast. Basically, at this point, it seems very much like she actually did accidentally do the kill.
Yeah, it's not a murder, it's a man's laughter. Sorry, I've only ever seen that word written down. How are you finding the movie here 24 minutes in?
Well, I'm really glad that we're looking at this one in detail, because already you've kind of shown me some things that were not readily apparent when I've watched it before, and just deepening my appreciation. Like the whole subplot of what happens with that baseball is an interesting example of that, which I didn't really notice when I've watched this previously.
Yeah, the baseball is quite fun. There's a couple of things in this movie that are kind of just like objects that have their own character arc.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, it's very good.
So, listeners, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to tell us that the intro to the podcast is too long, well, okay, not that last one, because we're not cutting it. You can email us at podcasts@8minutemovies.co.uk. And if you like the show and you think we're wonderful, you should tell a friend, or like leave a comment wherever you listen to it. Maybe walk off the street into a stranger's funeral and ask if you can speak, and give a lengthy eulogy about someone you don't know about, but try and work our podcast into it. Not in a way which implies that we were responsible for their death. I hasten to add that. Just maybe like plug it at the end. Don't do that. But the other things we highlighted are good.
If you didn't like the podcast, then just don't do anything.
Yeah, if you didn't like the podcast, we're sorry. We tried. You can stop listening now.
You can stop listening.
You are free.
Yeah, in a way, we've just given you back some time that you would have otherwise spent listening to the rest of the podcast. So you should be grateful, if anything.
Should we summarize the film in a haiku for the people who don't like this podcast, so they don't have to listen to the rest of the podcast or watch the rest of the film?
No.
Okay, good. All right. I have to go and eat Easter eggs. So where can you be found on the interweb, Peter?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and stuff like that at Kestrel Pie. That's Kestrel like the bird and Pi like the irrational number. And what about you?
I'm Kieran J. Walsh on Twitter, and I think that you should do a jingle for your for your sign out. I think you should come up with a radio show style like jingle we can just add in at the end.
You think I should do that? That's your solution to everything.
Look, you're a one-trick pony. You make music. Listeners, that's not true. He's an irritating Renaissance man. Good at everything he puts his hand to. What an annoying fella. And I, too, am the master of the backhanded compliment. Shall we end the podcast, or shall I continue negging you, Peter?
Right, everyone go away.
Yeah, goodbye, listeners. We love you. We're sorry about the hostile listening environment.